Hi submarine friends. Well, I've decided I need a change. I'm tired of working inside the submarine. Everything's under control in there. So I'm going to tackle a rather tricky project now, and that's the window and the window frame, welding it into the section of hull that I brought inside. I brought it in today so it can warm up, which will take a day or two because it was minus 20 this morning, so this steel's really cold. So it needs to be nice and warm. Anyways, so this is the window and the window frame, and I'll tell you my plan, and maybe someone can tell me if it's a good idea or a bad idea. So this is the retaining ring. That holds the dome window into the frame. And this is the O-ring, so that just goes into a groove that's machined on the edge. Well, actually it's not machined in the edge. It's just a constant taper, and this fits between the steel frame and the acrylic window. And then this is the dome window. I actually made this. I machined it from a big block of acrylic, and then I did a heat annealing treatment to it, which was a very, very big deal. Believe me, we had to build a computer-controlled oven because it takes 100 hours to anneal this. So the temperature climbs very slowly. It holds that temperature for quite a while, and then it drops that temperature very, very slowly. And it has to be within 2 degrees of the plan throughout the whole cycle. So it's really pretty complicated project. I had some help from an engineer friend who's an electronic engineer. So this is the frame. And it is a pretty heavy bugger. So you can see the taper here. It's called a conical seat. So what I have to do, first step, tomorrow morning, I drill the retaining bolt holes and I thread them. Once that's finished, I'm going to put it back in the lathe. I'll put my 4-jaw chuck in because it's big enough to grab this. And I will trace this angle. It's very hard to set up the lathe to get the angle of the window correct the first time. Like, it's really quite tricky because you can't mount this dome in the lathe easily to trace that angle. So I have this angle perfect. So I'll set it up in the lathe and I'll trace this angle so the lathe is set to this angle. Then I'm going to weld the frame into the hull section, and it's probably going to warp. I just have a feeling it's going to warp. So remachining this while it's in the hull is really, really tricky. I have actually built an apparatus to do that called a flange facing machine, and that's how I cut the angle on the original frame. And that's why I have a permanently bent pinky, because I injured myself quite badly on that process. But anyways, now when it warps, here's my plan. I will take my cutting torch and I will cut the whole frame out, but I'll cut it out 24 inches, and this is 16 inches. So that gives me a 4-inch ring all the way around. Now I can take that section, put it in the lathe. The lathe is already set to the correct angle, and I will remachine it to make it perfectly true. And then, so when I machine this face, the window will go lower into the frame. So then I have to take the face off the corresponding amount. So before I do all this, I will measure this distance, the distance of this land, so that I can replicate that after. So I machine this true. Then I take this down to get the depth correct. Then I simply weld that whole piece back into the hull. It won't warp this because it won't pull. Like when I weld this piece in, it should weld in without affecting this at all. That's my theory. I think it should work. Now I've posed this question to my submarine group so all the engineers can chew on it and give me their input. But I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact that if I do this, it won't weld. My concern is is it going to be an issue with the structural integrity of this forward head? I don't think so. I think it'll be perfectly fine. So that's my plan. I don't know. Tell me if it's a good idea or a bad idea. I've got a couple of days of work before I actually do this because I have to set this all up, drill, tap. It's all very time consuming. This has to warm up. This has to be prepped better. Has to be flipped upright. All of that takes time. So I have a couple of days to chew on this. Now there is still a chance that I can weld this guy in and it doesn't warp. So I've been researching on how to do that. And the key is to not over weld it, which is tough for me because I really weld stuff. I probably over weld and I don't need to. So if I did a full penetration weld, I would only have to do a couple of passes. And that's the key. The less passes you make, the less chance of warpage you have. So that's my plan, because making this machine to reface this in place, it's a big project. I don't know how long it took me last time, but it was substantial, and I really don't feel like doing it. It's one of those jobs it's not a fun job to make. Anyways, that's the plan. Ciao.